Hello, I'm going to be talking about the British National Health Service. Ben Shapiro keeps telling us that his wife is a doctor. I just thought I'd get that out of the way before anyone else makes that comment under the video. And there's something else that Ben Shapiro says about doctors. He says that if you have socialised medicine, if the state takes over the provision of medical care, then that means that what the state is saying, in effect, is that any doctor who chooses not to work for the state gets clapped into irons and either shot or chained to the operating table and instructed to get to work. Now, I have some news for Mr. Shapiro. He's dead wrong. In fact, working for the National Health Service in this country confers upon the qualified doctor power beyond the wildest dreams of any Mr. Shapiro or his wife. First of all, I'm going to show you an item written by a retired, and I have to say a more or less forcibly retired consultant surgeon, and it's about the state of the National Health Service. It was published in the Daily Telegraph and was written by J. Marion Thomas, and it is headed "GPs refuse to see that general practice is broken," and has the subheading "The problem is that GPs are untouchable, protected by their powerful trade union, the British Medical Association." And it starts with the following shocking statement, that as a surgeon he'd been frustrated by the problem of GPs not cooperating in the matter of post-op care, and I suppose he was implying that they weren't fulfilling their role as caregivers with sufficient dedication. And as soon as his article had been published, the following happened. An online petition was started by GPs to have me struck off the General Medical Council. He got anonymous abuse online, which he described as beyond shameful. The hospital where he worked was threatened with a boycott, that is, doctors refer patients to hospitals for operations. And what he's saying here is that there were doctors prepared to make their patients wait longer for treatment because they'd be in longer queues for other hospitals, rather than book them in to a hospital which employed him, a surgeon who had criticised them. I mean, it's just gobsmackingly horrible when you think of that, of the viciousness, of the spite. And these are doctors who take a Hippocratic oath. Then he said his Lifetime Achievement Award was withdrawn and he was cancelled from his professorship at Imperial College. Oh, and also, he was made to sign a document not to publish anything without oversight ever again, not to publish anything ever again, to do with the medical world, without oversight and being signed off by some sort of superior bureaucrat. Now, the thing is, that's a horrible situation, but much as I sympathise with Mr. Marion Thomas's plight, I have to point out that he has missed something. You see, although GPs, through their block power with the British Medical Association, can wield enormous influence, I mean, just look what happened to him. I'll come to that in a few moments. They can topple governments. But the surgeons themselves have a bunch of power too. And indeed, the National Health Service was set up only because the government of the day had to bribe the consultant surgeons to agree, because at the beginning they didn't want the NHS. They were dead against, the British Medical Association was dead against it. And the government of the day had to bribe the consultant surgeons who were driving the hospitals. They had to bribe them with all sorts of privileges, most of which persist today, and they don't even think about it now. The whole system is in such a mess. And Mr. Marion Thomas says in this article that it has to be fixed. But you know what? I don't think it ever could be. And that's a very depressing problem. It can't be fixed because the medical profession, the people that Ben Shapiro says have a gun to their heads to make them work, well, those are the people who have the guns. If the doctors went on strike or go slow or withdrawal of services or something, who'd get the blame? Not the doctors. It would be the government. So no government dares to cross them. People who need medical attention, who've paid their taxes, who are, as I am, accustomed to getting operations and treatments and physiotherapy and medicines without thinking about the expense, they are going to turn not to the doctors but to the government, and they're going to say, just pay them, get my kid his insulin, get my granny her new hip, just pay them. And the government, well, it's only got so much money, hasn't it? So that money has to come from something or somewhere else, or taxes go up. Oh no, Mr. Shapiro, it's not the government that has the weapon to the heads of the doctors, but the doctors certainly do have a weapon to the heads of the government. Mr. Meiren-Thomas is quite right. Our health service, which was set up by a Labour government in 1948 and was at the time heavily influenced by the Soviet model, because that was just about, I mean, apart from the fact that the Labour Party of the time had a lot of sympathy for the Soviet system, but the Soviet health system was the only socialised medicine system at the time that they had to use. And at the same time as using this Soviet model, the government was also tightly constrained by the demands of the medical elite, who, as I said, weren't that keen on the idea of socialised medicine and demanded all sorts of things sort of bolted on. And the government came up with a dog's breakfast of a system, which is steadily getting creakier and creakier. But no government would be brave enough to go head to head with an organisation that quite literally has our lives in its hands. I have no idea how they're going to deal with that one. Of course, it has to be dealt with, but it can only be dealt with by a government of extraordinary bravery, and I don't see one even on the horizon, let alone in power right now. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the Graniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.graniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.